Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be talking about my favourite books of the year so far. I have picked out 10 books that I really enjoyed reading this year, so from the 1st of January all the way to the end of June. Anything I've been reading in July I haven't included, which has been really difficult because I am reading a couple of absolute bangers at the minute, which I think would have made this list. My top 10 is mostly made up of adult fiction, although in my top 5 it is mostly non-fiction, and we have a couple of young adult books sprinkled into the top 10 as well. 5 of the books on my list I gave 4 stars and 5 of them I gave 5 stars. I'm gonna start by talking about the books that I gave 4 stars, and they are a very aesthetically pleasing pile. This selection of books that I gave 4 stars to, I'm not going to talk about in any particular order, it's just the order that I've picked them up. So I'm not ordering them like 10, 9, 8. Same when I get to the top 5, like there's no particular order with it apart from like my absolute favourite book of the year so far. Anyway, the books. So, first on my list is None of This Is Serious by Catherine Pacifica. This was our group read for the Irish Readathon and I read this so quickly. I read it in 1, maybe 2, maybe 1 with a snack break sittings. So this is about Sophie and her group of friends who are living in Dublin. They have been living the student life, but that is coming to an end. Everyone is starting to go their separate ways, figure their lives out, and it's starting to make Sophie feel really behind everyone else. She doesn't really know what she wants to do next. It's also about her mixed feelings for 2 different boys in her life, 2 romantic interests. There is also this crack that has appeared in the sky, which nobody really knows what it is, what it means. There's a lot of confusion around what to do in the face of this crack in the sky. There's a lot of kind of talk online, and I think that device was a really great way of capturing the anxiety that a lot of young people felt around the pandemic. This is a book that is also massively about the time that we spend online and how that can impact our real life abilities to communicate when so much of our communication is done via text, via social media posts. It's a book that really looks at the kind of scrolling culture and how people can get really caught just looking through endless streams of posts on their phones. Ultimately, this is a book about vulnerability in all those different areas of Sophie's life, and I think this book really brilliantly captures that anxiety that people feel when they have just finished college or university and everything that comes with that. So yes, a really great book, and really keen to read more from this author when she writes something else. Another Irish author, this is Watermelon by Marian Keyes. I also read this one during the Irish Readathon, and very often so many of my favourites end up being books that I read as part of that month of reading. I've really enjoyed all of the books that I've read from Marian Keyes so far. Her books are these kind of family sagas, but normally focused on one female member of the family in particular, and all the different facets of their lives and complications. So romantic relationships, friendships, their relationship with parenthood, both themselves being parents, but also their relationship to their aging parents, their sibling relationships as well. And while her books are always super chunky, I always completely devour them, despite being someone that doesn't really like a chunky book. So this is about Claire, who just after she has given birth to her first child, her husband James reveals that he has been having an affair and he is going to leave her. Claire doesn't know what to do, so she and her newborn baby go back to Ireland, move back in with her parents, and try to figure out her next steps. And it's about her figuring out her new identity as a mother, but also reclaiming her identity before she gave birth, before this relationship that she had. And this book had so much to say about the complicated feelings that new mothers can have, particularly around having their own lives independent from their motherhood. Claire was just a character that I really wanted to root for, and I really wanted the best for her, and I found all of her different relationship dynamics, be them familial or romantic or otherwise, found them just really interesting and nuanced, and I'm really excited to read more Marian Keyes. She has so many books out there. Watermelon is the first book in the Walsh family saga, and I think the next book in that is Marian Keyes' possibly most famous book, Rachel's Holiday, so I think that might be the one that I read next. Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake was one that I read and reviewed very recently. This is a female adult romance with just the right amount of steamy scenes for me. So this is about Delilah Green, who has been living her life in New York. Her photography career is starting to take off. She's having a really fun kind of non-committed dating and sex life. She kind of has a different woman in her bed every other night and she seems quite content with that. Delilah has no interest in going back to her hometown, her family home. That is until she is pressured to doing the photography for her estranged sister's wedding. So Delilah goes back to Bright Falls, her hometown, and her plan is just to breeze in and out. She doesn't want to stick around at all. That is until she is reintroduced to Claire, one of her stepsister's best friends. And Delilah realizes that there is something there. There is some sort of reason that is worth her sticking around for. There is fun to be had, and oh boy was there fun to be had. There were so many elements of this novel that I really enjoyed, like not just like the steamy scenes, although they were fantastic, but the lead up to them, the tension, Delilah's feelings of not wanting to go back to her hometown because people have kind of the conception of your identity that is entirely based on like what you were like as a teenager and you've like grown up. Like I really related to that feeling. And I also really appreciated the aspects of Claire's life that we learned about. So she has a daughter, and it's kind of about how her relationship with her daughter is shifting as her daughter gets older, and also the role that her daughter's father still plays in their lives. Thought this was really great. If you're looking for a female-female romance, I would really recommend this one. I'm really excited to read more from this author as well. This next book I feel is on the list like just because of the vibes. Like this is not the like highest quality of writing or storytelling on this list of books, but I just enjoyed it so much, and that is The Visa by Lizzie O'Hagan. So this is a male-female romance between Maya and Jack, who decide to get married. They knew each other at university and they end up reconnecting a little bit later in life. Jack is a New Zealander who needs a visa in order to stay in the country. Maya doesn't really believe in marriage, and the reasons for that are quite nuanced and complicated when you look into her family history, but they just decide, well, let's get married then. Jack's a complete commitment phobe. He needs a visa. Maya doesn't believe in marriage. It seems like the perfect solution. They are living in a wedded, sexless bliss. That is until Jack starts dating someone, and maybe he's not so much of a commitment phobe after all. Maybe he's actually interested in getting to know and properly dating this girl, and Maya doesn't like that. So of course it's completely obvious that these two are gonna realize that they are actually in love with each other. Getting married isn't actually as simple as clicking your fingers and then it's done. Like they have to really prove that they know each other really well, that they've had this relationship, so they are getting to know each other, they are living together. It is of course hugely obvious where this story is going, but it was just so much fun. I read this on my flight to Berlin and a little bit in the airport afterwards, and I feel like normally when I read a book while I'm traveling, it's actually more likely to make an appearance on my top 10 on my favorite books list, because I just really connect with that reading experience. I can really ground myself in kind of like where I was when I was reading it, and because of traveling, it's an opportunity to really sink into a book for a longer amount of time than I would normally be able to. So this is definitely one where the reading experience of this definitely feeds into my very positive feelings towards it. But a great book and very fun nonetheless. Having said that, I think this next one I also read on a flight. So there definitely seems to be some sort of link there, but that is Loveless by Alice Oseman. So this is the first of two young adult books that have made my top 10. I really enjoy young adult books that are kind of more like new adult, like they're kind of set at a college or a university rather than a high school. So this is about Georgia and her friends going off to university and all of the different aspects of self-discovery that happen when you first are in that new experience, those new surroundings and that bit of independence. It's a book about how friendships can be impacted by those new university experiences and how to foster new friendships as well. And for Georgia, as it is for so many young people, university is an opportunity for her to have her eyes opened to the spectrum of sexualities and understand more about her own sexuality and identity. And that's something that she has for a long time felt quite confused about and not really known how she identifies. And when she discovers the terms asexual and aromantic, that is something that really resonates with her as something that she wants to learn more about. And I think that kind of experience, whether it be about asexuality or aromanticism or any of the other identities on the spectrum of queerness, your eyes are open to that at university when you are meeting lots more LGBTQ plus people. Maybe there's a club or society that really helps you understand yourself and opens your eyes to a lot of things. I think that is such a common experience for young people going to university, and I just really appreciated how this novel depicted that. I've read quite a few Alice Oseman books now, but there are still a few more that I need to read, so keen to get to those by the end of the year. Okay, so we're now into the 5 books that I gave 5 stars. And the next 2 books I'm going to talk about, one of them is a young adult book and one of them is an adult non-fiction book. And both of these are books that my boyfriend picked out for me to read when he chose my TBR for a month. And I don't think either of us fully appreciated what a great job that he did with picking books out for me, because 50% of the books that he picked out for me, he picked 4 books for me, 50% of them have made my top 5 books of the year so far. I feel like he got it in his head that he didn't do a good job because one of them was a bit of a dud, and that was like not his fault. It was definitely the book's fault. And if you want to know about my most disappointing read of the year, I will be talking about it in my mid-year freak out tag, so make sure you subscribe if you want to make sure you see that. But yeah, so the young adult book that he picked out for me that I absolutely loved was Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. So this is of course a Cinderella inspired story. It's about a society that is entirely built around the Cinderella story, and it has spiraled into this extremely misogynistic society where every year girls go to this ball with the aim of being chosen by a man, and if you aren't chosen, this can have devastating consequences not only for yourself but for your entire family. So everything in this world is kind of geared towards preparing teenage girls for this experience, and of course that creates a huge amount of inequality. You know, the wealthier girls can afford better beauty regimes, better clothing. It's a misogynistic society in so many ways, and our main character Sophia has had enough. She doesn't even want to marry a man in the first place, and again, giving it up for young adult for having some... She doesn't even want to marry a man in the first place. And another theme that you will notice, I think, across my favourite books of the year so far are LGBTQ plus themes. Like, that's something that I'm really drawn to and really enjoy in the books that I read. So Sophia sets off on this journey to remake the world into something better, into a world where she can be the one to choose. And over the course of this journey, she learns more and more about the truth behind this Cinderella story that they have all been told. I thought this was so page-turning. I'm not normally one for young adult fantasy, but this was one that really hit the right notes for me. I really love a fairy tale retelling, so that definitely helped. And I just thought all of the characters in this were really great, and there were lots of twists and turns along the way that I didn't see coming. Again, another author that I'm very keen to read more from. Okay, so 3 non-fiction books to talk to you about before I finish on my absolute favourite book of the year so far. The 5 by Hallie Rubenhold was a book that I found so impactful, and this was another one that I was reading while travelling. I read most of this on a coach journey. So this is a really thoroughly researched and superbly written non-fiction account of the lives of the 5 women that were murdered by Jack the Ripper. So we have Polly, Annie, Elizabeth, Catherine, and Mary Jane. Jack the Ripper is this kind of figure that has been mythologized in a way, I think particularly around London. Like, you can go on Jack the Ripper walks, and that just makes me feel really icky and weird. And in this book, Hallie Rubenhold is tracing the lives of the 5 women that he murdered from their childhoods all the way up through their adult lives, and looking at the circumstances that made their lives really difficult and challenging. Experiences of poverty, of grief, looking at how unbelievably difficult it was for a woman in this time of history when they had no financial independence, when there were huge societal problems with alcohol use. Often when these women are spoken about, they are horribly dismissed as if their lives weren't worth as much because they have become known as sex workers or prostitutes. First of all, even if they were all sex workers or prostitutes, their lives are still valuable and important, but it's also just not accurate. Not all of these women were sex workers. And this book just really debunks a lot of the false narratives that we've been given about these women, and I thought it was so impressive how the author was able to discover so much about the lives of these women. I thought it was fascinating to think about how this book was constructed, but also just so important to learn about the lives of these women, and I found it really powerful. Next on my list is Manchester United and the Trouble and All That by Matt Dickinson. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I did speak about it in my most recent reading wrap-up, but this is a really thorough non-fiction book about 1999 and its significance in English footballing history. It was significant for a number of reasons, but most famously in the context of Manchester United, which is the football team that I support. It's really well known for being the treble winning year. So 3 different trophies were won by Manchester United, most famously the Champions League win, which is the big European competition, which was won in quite dramatic last-minute circumstances. So it's a really thorough book that looks at some of the games that are perhaps not as famous as that Champions League final, but were also really significant in that season. It looks at some of the key figures, both players on the pitch, but backroom staff and management. And it also looks at the wider societal circumstances of football at that time, how it intersected with celebrity, with politics, with social circumstances. And I felt a real personal connection with this book because the 1999 season has some of my earliest memories. But obviously there was so much stuff that I didn't know about this season because I was so young. Highly recommend this one for football fans. Another book that I would recommend for football fans, although not exclusively football fans, is How Not to Be Strong by Alex Scott. So Alex Scott is a very well-known female footballer. She played for Arsenal and England. And since she has retired from professional football, she has gone into broadcasting. She's on a number of different shows, has presented a lot of different shows, and she was also a contestant a couple of years ago on Strictly Come Dancing. This is a book that looks at her whole life from her very early childhood years in East London, her family relationships and the complexities there, particularly her relationship with her father, the beginnings of her footballing career, the incredible success that she had in her footballing career, but also the prejudice that she faced for being a woman, and specifically a woman of colour, in this field, and how she has also gone on to experience those prejudices in her broadcasting career, despite being way more qualified than a lot of the men that she is presenting alongside. At the core of this book, I think the title really captures what it's about. How not to be strong. It is about finding room to grow in your vulnerabilities and building your strength from those vulnerabilities. It's a book that shows that you don't need to be constantly like stone-faced and stoic. You can open up to your emotions, and that does not make you weak. I think there is so much inspiration that you can take from that, whether you are into football or not. But me, as someone who is really into football, I found it particularly powerful. I am a big fan of the women's game, and I'm finding it increasingly difficult to actually support the men's game. So I think it's more important than ever to look at these stories from female footballers and listen to their experiences. And the final book I'm going to talk to you about, my absolute favourite book of the year so far, is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emeze. This is a phenomenal book. This book hits such a sweet spot for me in terms of just being like really vibey and fun and like super entertaining, but also having like so much depth and nuance to it and important like messages and topics covered in it. So this is about Faye, who is starting to get back into dating, but is really struggling with it. She doesn't really necessarily know what she wants. She finds the relationships that she's having with men quite complicated. She is still coming to terms with the death of her husband. That's something that she doesn't ever really think will leave her. She does start dating a man that seems to have a lot of patience with her, really understanding of her circumstances, and wants to build the relationship with a foundation of friendship before anything else. The relationship that she has with this man also offers her a really fantastic career opportunity. She is an artist, and her connection with him helps her secure a really fantastic opportunity, which also involves her going to stay with this guy's family in this incredibly beautiful utopia-like island where she is sipping cocktails and sitting by the pool. However, things become a lot more complicated when she arrives on this dream island and begins to get feelings for someone that she really shouldn't. And I don't want to spoil who that person is because I didn't know it when I was like reading this book. Like, I didn't know who that person was until it got to it in the book. And let me tell you, I screamed. I thought Faye was such an incredible character. Like, she was someone that you really wanted to root for, but she was also really nuanced. Like, you were able to see her flaws. You were able to think, you know, that's not the decision that I would make in these circumstances. Oh, that's probably not the way you should go about it. Like, she felt like a really genuine, authentically crafted character, as did all of the characters around her. There's also bisexual representation in this book that I thought was done absolutely fantastically with multiple characters. And I thought the depiction of learning to love again after experiencing unimaginable grief was done fantastically. Huge recommendation for this book. Obviously, it's just, I think it would appeal to so many different kinds of readers. It really like elevated the romance genre for me. And yeah, just absolutely brilliant. So that is it. They are my favorite books of the year so far. Let me know if you've read any of them down in the comments, and let me know what you thought of them, or let me know what your favorite book of the year is so far. I would love to get some recommendations from your favorite books. If you don't have anything in particular to say but you want to let me know that you are here, leave me a fruit emoji in honor of Watermelon by Marian Keyes. That's it for me today. I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll speak to you in my next video.